really practical? Well, good. Glad you asked that today, Trevor. So, kind of really want to cover, airplane comes in your shop, what's going to be the most routine? Are you guys going to be fabricating composite wings and slapping on the titanium leading edge and saying, boom, there it is. Okay, go out and fly. Now you might. Okay, I have a friend who's was the managing director for Cirrus Assembly Line in Tennessee for the last 10 years. And so on a regular basis, that's what they were doing, slapping them together. Is that really the majority of what you're going to be doing? No. What's the majority of what you're going to be doing? Preventative maintenance, hopefully, but probably not. What else? Go ahead. 100 hours, 50 hours, good. Routine maintenance. Preventative maintenance, maybe. Routine maintenance, absolutely. Okay, plane comes in, oh man. We got to work on it. If the plane sits, they're going to spend money. If the plane flies often, actually, you'll spend less time on maintenance. Isn't that funny? It's true. So troubleshooting fuel issues, troubleshooting faulty indicators, and troubleshooting venting issues. Okay? That's pretty general. What's the first topic there? What would be a typical fuel issue that might come to mind? Leaking. Fuel leaking. Good. Yep. Pump leaking. What else? Water. Fuel what? Hopefully not too much starvation, but yeah, engine could have fuel starvation issues. Hopefully not too often. So what? Contamination. Yes. Anyone else? What else? Other fuel issues you might have?
No venting.
Chafing. Okay. Abrasions to fuel lines. Super common. Okay. Very common. Oh man. The trim cable is rubbing the fuel line when you open up the panel. What's the shiny spot on the side of the rigid line? Stuff like that you got to pick up on. Or the Apache. If you go out and do the inspection on the Apache, what's the green residue that's on the bottom of the airplane? And one of the things that ticks me off the most is if someone does a repair and then doesn't clean it. How in the world do I know that your repair ops checked good? Well, I changed the gasket. Thank you. Did it actually seal it? You don't really know that. And that is super common. Is for them, you'll get a running seat. Okay, so it's running down towards the trailing edge of the wing. So you'll pop the sump out, clean it around there, but then there's still a seat at the back. Well, now I'm thinking, is that the fuel tank that's leaking? It says the sump was changed, but was it really a fuel tank issue? Okay? Clean it up. That way you can, as it goes along, 50 hours later, you'll know, hey, it's not leaking anymore, okay? All right, fuel system repair. Any evidence of malfunction or leak should be addressed before the aircraft is released for flight. There are some stipulations, and this is where the FAA asks several questions, very ambiguous questions, so we'll look at those. Manufacturer's maintenance and operations instructions must be used to guide the technician in maintaining the fuel system in an airworthy condition. What do you do if you don't have a maintenance reference on the old 40s and 50s models for a fuel cap? What happens if there's nothing in AC-43? A lot of times, Piper especially assumed that you already knew all these aircraft. And as I told you originally, how long were aircraft designed to last? 10 to 15 years. Well, congratulations, you got a 75-year-old, not Dean, but the Apache out there, sitting out in our hangar, okay? I mean, seriously. So now we've got to figure out, well, what does a fuel cap do? Well, it vents to the atmosphere. Does it work? There's not really a basic inspection method except for visual inspection. And sure, you could put light amount of pressure in it to make sure that air is blowing through one side of it. Okay? Troubleshooting knowledge of the fuel system looks a lot like a schematic, but you understand what is the fuel system doing. Okay? If you were to look at this, kind of overwhelming a little bit. Where would you start? Where would you start with a system like this if you were looking at a big picture?
Legend of Pendulum, spider.
Okay, so spiders, where are spiders typically going to be located? Well, they are located on top of the engine. Okay, thankfully that is the standard. Okay, for both Continental and Lycoming, they're both on top of the engine. What else? What else do you see in this picture that seems familiar? Okay, you have fuel tanks. You have a selector. Two selectors actually. Yep. Anything else that might seem big picture-ish? Okay, where's the gas cleaner? I guess they're calling that. Nope, right here, strainer. Right here. Okay, there's a vapor separator on a Continental. What's the purpose of a vapor separator? Good job. For what reason?
Prevent vapor lock?
Prevent vapor lock. So they will send vapor back. Typically, they'll send it right back to the strainer, or sometimes they'll send it back to the top side of the pump. Okay, a vapor release, or back to the tank. Okay? Because vapor is flammable. All right? So check connection point of fuel lines. So if fuel is continually leaking, what would we see? Slight blue residue. If it is a very mild leak, what color is it? Say what?
Clear.
It'll turn actually a slight greenish tint if it's a very small leak because it's having time to dry. Okay? If it's blue, it's typically a running seep or running leak where it's leaking just enough to keep it fresh and blue. But if it's a very mild leak, it's actually going to be a slight green residue because it has time to dry. And fuel leaks, that's what I was saying, fuel leaks often produce a mark or a stain. Odors may point to the source of a leak. Zach, what does it smell like? Yesterday you found a leak. What does it smell like? Jet fuel. Okay? Jet fuel. So point to it. If you open a panel and it smells like fuel, especially Piper, if you open the floor panel at the pilot's feet and you smell something, right beside the pilot is a fuel selector, notorious for leaking. Okay? Don't just dismiss it. Well, sure, it smelled like fuel. It's probably because of fuel selector. No, if it smells like fuel, it's probably not sealed. Okay? Leaks in areas where vapor can collect must be repaired before flight. Okay? Right? What's the logic there? To it? Ignites. Ignition. Source of ignition. External leaks, minor, may be deferred if not ignition danger is imminent. So, this is where it gets a little hairy, but you need to know it. What's the picture here at the top of the screen? You may know what that is on the right side. Joey, what is it, man? Huh? Injector, fuel injector, okay? So we have two types of fuel injectors. Now, if you're an automotive guy or gal, everything you know about fuel injection is totally different in aviation. So, if you want to compare it, throw it out the door. It's totally different, okay? We're continuous flow. If the engine's running, every fuel injector has fuel coming to it all the time. definition, if the engine's running, every fuel injector should have fuel to it the whole entire time, okay? Now, B here is a typical, normally aspirated fuel injector. What does that mean? Not forced induction, meaning it doesn't have a turbocharger and it doesn't have a supercharger, okay? So, fuel comes in, and here we have a slight pressure. It's going to push in, and it's going to actually drip. It's not like a diesel Ford, thank goodness, where it's going to emit this huge spray. It's actually just a steady stream. I know it looks like a spray, but it's more like a steady stream just going right in, okay? And it's usually like, it varies based on engine speed, but like 7 psi, 6 psi for each nozzle. Now, when we get to higher altitudes, we have a problem. What happens at higher altitudes, Gavin? Pressure decreases. So we have this thing, spinny thing, that Anthony really likes called a turbocharger. Okay? Turbocharger. Turbocharger takes exhaust gases and helps to force more intake pressure. Well, what's the purpose of that? Yes. It deceives the engine to say, hey, we're going to actually add a little air pressure. Because think about it, as I go up in my recip engine and I'm pumping and I get to 21,000 feet. I think a Cessna 210's top value is like 21,000 feet. Okay? So what happens is now the plane begins to fly like this. Okay? Oh, I'll try. I think I can. And it's going to go along like this. Okay? It may be 18,000. You know what? I want to take that back. Maybe the turbocharger goes up to 21. Maybe regular recip's like 17, 18,000. So it's going, I think I can, like this, flying like this. And the reason why it's doing that is because it's reached its maximum volumetric efficiency, or deficit. It's losing its volumetric efficiency. How much air it can take in, density of the air, because it's thinner, to how much it can compress. So if the air's thinner, what's going to happen? It can't breathe. It can't compress enough to get the energy from the kaboom. Use that in your quiz. Good job. Kaboom. You can't get the energy from the kaboom to keep the pilot happy, okay? So what do? They add what we call, and now I don't know why they come up with these names, but sometimes they come up with cool names. It's called upper deck pressure, okay? You know, typically upper decks, like, you know, people like me have to buy those tickets. But upper deck here is upper deck pressure from the turbocharger, okay? So turbocharger, then they add upper deck pressure to force that air pressure to get fuel to continually flow. Because at high altitudes, Trevor, we have a problem. Airplanes flying along. Fuel is going to start going back up this way. So what they do is they add upper deck pressure to force that pressure, or force that fuel into the cylinder so that it cannot flow back up. Okay? High altitudes, yes? Sure. So you have, your car has exhaust, right? Yeah. So as your engine does intake, compression, power, and exhaust, they take some of that exhaust gas, and instead of going to exhaust pipe just out the back of the car or the airplane, they take it to this giant spinny thing called a turbocharger, okay? And then it uses that exhaust gases to spin a compressor / turbine, okay? And then on the inside, as they're going to take air in, it's going, the gases are going to spin that turbocharger, and it's going to help produce a more powerful induction air. So one side's exhaust, and it's using the exhaust to spin it. And as it uses that exhaust to spin it, the other side is going to take in fresh air and send it to your cylinders on the fresh air intake side. But it's using exhaust gases to power that turbocharger. So the whole time the engine's running, that turbocharger is able to spin. Okay? Now we do that. There's several other components, wastegates and wastegate controllers. I'm not going to talk about that. But what it does is use the exhaust gases to help force air induction. So what they actually do is they'll run a, let's not talk about that. Okay, forget it. So the point here is we have normally aspirated and we have turbocharged fuel injectors, okay? This is a super common place to leak. Okay? Well, what did I already tell you about aviation? Continuous. So if you have a little fuel leak, oh, you know, it's like a car. Oh, it's just a little fuel leak. It's only going to, it's whenever the pressure rail is going to send the fuel. No, it's always flowing. Air-cooled engine runs a lot hotter than a water-cooled engine. We've got fire, we've got exhaust right below it. What do we say, Josh? Kaboom! Okay, we've got fire outside the cylinder now because we have a slight leak because fuel is always flowing. Okay? All right? So there's a danger. Start looking for blue residue. Okay? And as air comes through, it's very hard to see a leak. So look for the blue residue at the bottom of the injectors. They're tiny, cute little injectors. All right, any questions? Good question, Cindy. Yes, Leo?
Is that measurable pressure? So like,
Affirmative.
you would see that on your pressure?
You see that on your pressure gauge in the cockpit. Yep. Yes, sir. And then we as mechanics, we actually rig all that. You'll have an opportunity at full 14. We rig it at idle, and then every one of you will take it to max throttle. Full 14 this year, and I'll mess it up, and then you have to fix it. Yeah, it makes everyone a little scared, especially 2,700 RPMs with 24 inches of boost. It'll kick it. It's pretty loud. All right. So use fuel system schematic to troubleshoot, just as you would electrical troubleshooting. To check if fuel valve leaks internally, turn off the fuel valve. And then do what? Pull the gasculator bowl release, okay, that little springy thing inside. And then if you still get fuel flowing to the gasculator, what does that mean about your fuel selector? It's not working. There's a leak, internal leak inside of it. And at that point, John, what would you do? You said it yesterday. Say it again today.
You take the fuel selector out and inspect it.
And change the
O-rings or whatever.
O-rings, okay? They're 80 cents a piece. If you have the fuel selector part, just change the stinking O-rings. Why would you go through, let's charge you $200 to, crawl under the floor, pull the fuel selector out and inspect it, but we didn't change the O-rings. Yeah.
Would they be special order O-rings, or is the ones you have in the cabin? That could be a problem, right?
Okay, sure. I don't think I've ever worked in a shop that didn't have fuel selector O-rings on.
No, but can you use the normal, like, are they standard sizes, or are they, you would have to get one specific?
Yeah, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I know it's an MS 28775 dash. It's probably like a 010 or 011 or something like that.
Those
But
are like
they're
typically in stock.
pretty common, yeah. But every shop would have those on the shelf, yeah, and they're super cheap. So go ahead and just change them if you have to pull the fuel selector, okay? So, drain the bowl, turn on the boost pump. What would be the purpose of turning on the boost pump? Yes. And what's cool is, after doing this, even maybe during A&P school, you will be able to hear when the fuel pump has fuel and not. It makes a significant sound difference, okay? I mean, it's super loud when there's no fuel in it. You're like, well, is that right, or is it? But as soon as you, I forgot to turn the fuel selector on. Turn the fuel selector on, and all of a sudden it quietens down, okay? And what magic happens is there's actually fuel pressure that begins to rise when you turn the fuel selector on. Okay? All right, so you need to know this forever. Okay? I think there's probably, I don't know why, but there's probably 5 or 6 questions in your written on this, as well as 2 oral questions on types of fuel leaks. So if at any time you need to pay attention to this now. Okay? 4 basic classifications. Now this is sketchy. So you have a 3/4 inch max is just what we call a stain. 3/4 to 1.5 inches is what we call a seep. 1.5 inches to 4 inches is what we call a heavy seep. Are any of those legal?
Stain.
All 3 of those are legal to go out and fly while they're there. Can you believe that? It's $6 a gallon. It's almost like Joey letting his Ford leak, huh? So, you know, the one that's super dangerous, according to them, is actually a running leak. Now, let's use logic though. If an airplane, Joey's working in a shop, and if an airplane comes in and it has a heavy seat, are you going to say, let's call it good enough? You're going to fix it, okay? Now, where would this come into play? Truthfully, where would this come into play? Is typically around wet wings. Well, hey, I noticed you had about 10 hours ago when you were in the shop. I noticed you had a stain. So then maybe he's like, oh yeah, I really need to fly, because they always need to fly. The moment the plane gets in the shop, they really need to fly the next day. Man, I really need to fly tomorrow. I really need to fly. If you could get the plane done today, I gotta fly. You know, you fly twice a year, but tomorrow you need to fly. So they head out, and then they come back. You know, they've flown now, they're 5 hours. They come back and you say, hey, you know, it's not getting any better, but the fuel leak is now a seep. Well, it's not dangerous. It's not a piper right over the brake. So maybe it goes on a couple more months, and finally you say, hey, we're now reaching the point of heavy seep in just a matter of 6 months. So when you come in for annual, we gotta go ahead and do that. And what that does for them is it prepares their pocketbook. Okay? It prepares their wallet, because when you start talking about wet wings and having to do it, labor's going to run them probably $2 to $3 grand. So they kind of want to know that. Hey, I got to tear it down and add annual and fix that seat. Okay? If a running leak comes up, you by law need to tell them, hey, you're in danger right now. Okay?
Is this on, like, the surface?
On the
Or is it on the
surface, yep.
floor, or what?
It'll be on the surface, typically on a wing or something like that. Good. So, let's ask, who shall we ask? Oh, why don't we ask Mark? Mark, so, what if you open a panel and you see a blue residue on the bottom of the floor underneath the co-pilot seat? What would your thoughts be there? There's a leak. Good. What about safety precautions? Any safety precautions that would come to mind immediately? You have fuel in the cockpit. Oh, it's a co-pilot's fine, right? No, because, hey, speaking firsthand, I have watched students, not here, inhale gasoline or avgas vapors, and believe it or not, it looks like they are absolutely hammered. I mean, you think it's funny until it happens, and from just putting their head in a panel and it's leaking, and all of a sudden they get out and they're like, and it's like, whoa, hold on. So imagine a pilot goes out and you're like, well, the leak really wasn't that bad. Tight, enclosed space, fuel starts to leak. They're in the air with an airplane. It's not a good situation. inside a tight space, there is a regulation that says, guess what? Fix it, okay? Replacement of gasket seals and packings. Some seals may be repaired by replacing gasket seals or packings. Do not use old ones. Have I already said that? Yeah.
Just a question, do you actually have to wait 30 minutes for each of those?
So the thought is, okay, fine, you change a sump. By the time you do your paperwork, you come back and look at it and say, oh yeah, it's object's good, okay? That's the thought. I mean, paperwork's gonna take you longer than it does to fix a sump. So, that's the idea. And you start looking at some of those, okay. Or you bring an airplane in the next morning, like ours, Zach, right? Next morning, you have a drip on the floor. That wasn't there the night before. Huh. Okay, so then you can actually look at how big it is after 30 minutes or an hour. Okay? All right. Always be sure to use the correct replacement as identified by the part number. Please, 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 you're working on a fuel tank. What manual or manuals should you have open, Isaac?
Manufacturers.
Service manual and? IPC. IPC. What does IPC stand for, Sam Peterson? Josh, do you remember?
Illustrated parts catalog.
Nailed it. Okay, so illustrated parts catalog. What's the purpose of it? Well, the service manual didn't say I was supposed to put the service manual, and this is a great comment. Oh, I saw one bolt holding the fuel tank cap on, or the fuel filler neck on. So I just put the one bolt in it. Duh. Okay, so what should I do? Then you go to the IPC and it says, oh wait, there's 8 bolts. They're AN4-16s. Logic would say, oh, those 8 bolts are all supposed to be AN4-16s that hold the filler neck on. Okay, so you have to have them together. Okay, how do I know if it's the right part? IPC. Okay, we don't ever tell the short instructor it's the way I found it. No, because when you tell the FAA that, they're like, oh, it really, okay. Yeah, and then you get slapped with a violation. Okay. So beware of limited shelf life. Actually, it is required that when you buy an O-ring, that it actually has an expiration date on it. Just like your prescription pills, so do O-rings. Will have an FAA PMA number with a shelf life on them. And it will be stamped on the baggie. Okay? Steps. Remove, clean. What would you clean fuel with? A fuel stain. What would you clean fuel stain with? Sam, what would you use, man? What about MEK? Would that be a good cleaner? Only if you want to repaint the aircraft. Okay? Well, degreaser, good. Not all degreasers, okay? Are safe. Soap and water. Any others?
Naphtha?
Not preferably, but you can. Yep. Any others? Okay, Stoddard cleaner. Okay. Sometimes you can use alcohol, and if you're on the mission field and you don't have that, you can actually use fresh gasoline or avgas on a rag to clean it, and it will clean it right off. Okay, put it on a rag. Don't dump the gasoline on top of the wing. But you can put it on a rag if you don't have it, and it will actually clean it off. Fresh gasoline will clean it off. Okay, and then come back over and wipe off all the residue. Always repair fuel tanks in accordance with manufacturer's instructions. Rigid removable fuel tanks may be riveted, welded, or soldered. Some of you, your welding skills, maybe not, depending on design. Just kidding. I wouldn't necessarily weld a fuel tank. Pretty dangerous. Generally, repairs must match the construction technique. So if it was soldered, what does that mean? You have to solder it. If it was brazed, then you braze it, okay? Some metal fuel tanks may be repaired by sloshing. And this is kind of gone now, but we, like motorcycles, we love this. And so it's like you take the chemical, you put the chemical in there, and you do what? And it says, what's so funny is it says for like 3 minutes, so it's like, you know. So, sloshing is still allowed on some of the older aircraft to be able to get all the areas sealed. Yes, sir? Why wouldn't you weld on a tank? Kaboom. Or sometimes they'll tell you that it changes the internal molecular structure of the material.
It shouldn't be a fire hazard, like if you're taking it, you're gonna back burn it, it's doing it right.
Correct. Good. We'll talk about how you're going to purge it. Welded tanks. To locate fuel leaks, pressurize the tank to 0.5 to 3.5, depending on manufacturer's specifications. Brush and spray tank with soapy water and look for bubbles. Does that sound familiar? Dubby? Yeah. Clean tank interior and remove vapors before welding. Okay. The appropriate way: steam, hot water purge, inert gas purge. Please, I've watched people hold a match over the top of the tank, and it gets really exciting for a minute until basically all the vapors have. That's not a preferred method. It's exciting, but it's not preferred. To remove flux after welding in an aluminum tank, use a 5% solution of nitric or sulfuric acid. And that is a written question. Here's the exact written question. What should be used to remove flux from an aluminum tank after welding repairs? 5% solution of nitric or sulfuric acid. Another one is, what is recommended practice for cleaning a fuel tank before welding? Steam. Steam. Okay. Here's a work of art from your book. Welding fuel tank. Okay, riveted tanks. Riveted tanks. Seams and rivets are coated with a fuel-resistant compound. Oftentimes Pro-Seal or the knockoff Pro-Seal. But it's still flexible, so don't be alarmed by that. Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. Minor leaks may only require application of sealing compound, okay? But the problem is you got to get the sealing compound all the way off the old one to be able to get to the leak, okay? Always follow manufacturer's guidance to ensure safe airworthy repair. Turnip plate tanks assembled by soldering are typically repaired by soldering. Flux from soldering must be removed before return to service and follow manufacturer's instructions. What is turnip plate? I'm glad you asked. Turnip plate, or turn E, is traditionally an alloy of lead and tin, typically in a ratio of 4 to 1, that is used as a coating in producing turnip plate. In recent years, lead has been replaced with zinc and is used as a ratio of 50-50. Okay, tin and zinc. Turning is used to coat steel sheets in order to produce a strong, corrosion-resistant product. It was used on roofing materials, packaging, and gasoline tanks. Bladders may be repaired by patching. Okay, there is still some of the manuals, for example, with Apache and certain older aircraft that says you could take a patch. Now, if you put a tire patch on it, you will have the opportunity to do it again within just a few hours. Okay, tire patches really do not stick to the bladders very well at all. They weren't designed for it. A patch, a bladder patch, is very, very sticky, and it will not come off very easily, and it's sealed pretty well. Okay. Damage fully penetrating the bladder is repaired with an internal and external patch, usually required to be wetted with fuel at all times to prevent drying and cracking. To store empty, the tank interior should be coated with a film of engine oil to extend the slide. Okay, so if you pull a bladder for shipping an aircraft overseas, or if you're going to put it in a container, what happens in those containers? Obviously, you have to have all the tanks empty with fuel when you put it in a shipping container. But those containers get like 150 degrees inside. And as it sits at port for 4, 5, 6 months, I've had containers sit at port. You open those doors and it's like condensation everywhere. What's it going to do to your bladder tank at 150 degrees with no fuel in it? Crack it. Okay? So if you're going to ship them overseas, missionaries, coat them with oil. Good coat of oil. Okay? And just placard it. Hey, it has preventative or preservative in the fuel tank. Okay? Ensure that the bladders are correctly secured in place, that you haven't broken any of the bolts. Yes, sir?
When you go to use that bladder after you preserve it with digital, how do you clean that up?
Add gas.
Yeah.
A lot. You have to run it through several times. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Repairing integral tanks. Purge with CO2, inert gas. Okay. And continue purging throughout the repair. Repair in a well-ventilated area, not in an air-conditioned building. Okay? Repair. It's funny. You kind of want it to be cool because you're wearing all this material, but you want to make sure it's ventilated. Yes?
Yeah, because air conditioning dries the air, heat gas.
Possibly. Possibly. But I think that also the idea is that you're just allowing the fumes to go right through the air conditioning system too, if it's not ventilating outside. Just recirculating the same air. All right, when entering the tank, large aircraft, position an assistant outside the tank for safety. Wear non-static clothing and wear respirator with a continuous air supply. All right, written question. Which gas is used for purging of an aircraft fuel tank? CO2, carbon dioxide. And then what should be used? What should be used on an integral fuel tank before attempting repairs? CO2. So a couple different ways it worded the question. Same thing, carbon dioxide or CO2. This is what you might look like if you went inside a fuel tank. Okay. Care must be exercised to guard against static electricity. Yes, sir?
Is CO2, because it's such a big volume, that has to be a lot cheaper than argon, or why CO2?
Because doesn't CO2, carbon dioxide, doesn't it push out oxygen, or potential for oxygen to add to a flame if the flame was to occur?
Is it heavier?
So it's going to force oxygen out of the area.
Is argon not heavy?
I don't know.
I think it is. But imagine if argon with that much volume would be a lot more effective than CO2.
It's funny. So welders we use the carbon dioxide on a MIG. We use pure argon on a TIG. Wonder why. Okay, fire safety. Avgas, as you already know, is very volatile. Turbine engine fuel is less volatile, but still poses an enormous capacity to ignite. Treat all fuel as potential hazard, fire hazard. Always have a fire extinguisher ready. CO2 is the preferred, no water. Okay. When you're doing a fuel tank, prefer to have it taped off, masked off, taped up, and then have your blankets around it. If you have to lean on the aircraft, where do we not lean? Ailerons, flaps, those things that move, please don't lay on them. Where would you sit if you need to sit or lay on the wing and then the owner walks in while you're laying on their wing? Where should you be stationed on that wing? On the spar. On the spar. Right here. Right here, if you're going to lay down, okay, and then the owner comes in, and their favorite thing is to sit there and do this. What are you doing? Well, I think I'm just playing in your fuel tank. You know, it's like, so just make sure you're appropriately stationed. Usually, the best thing's kind of over the main gear because of that structure there. If it holds up to the pilot's landings, it should hold up to you sitting on the wing right there, okay? So, be stationed right over the spar, main spar. All right? Actually, the leading edges are pretty weak. Okay? Some of this brings back lovely memories for some of you already. Isaac, it's your favorite? Yep. Okay, typical repair. What are they doing? When they have the top off, they're going to clean all this gunk off. Try to make it look brand new. There it is. Look at that. Going back in, new tanks. Okay, and then this will be you someday very soon. Okay, you have to. When you go to get tape, all those seams, that fabric tape, gotta get in there somehow, especially if you have like tiny arms like mine. You know, Dan's arms or Josh's arms, you know, they don't even have to look in there, they just reach. All right. So this is one that came out of Ludington. They were taking some passengers across to the mail clinic. They got halfway across the lake. Engine began to pop. This is what's left. When the mechanic was investigated, came back and said, "Hey, when you did the sump, what did you find?" They said, "Well, we found a little bit of trash at the sump, so we just kept purging it until it was completely clean at the sump." Okay, what about the gascolator? Well, there was some there too. Is there anything downstream of the gascolator? There is. There's a little tiny screen about that long on a fuel injector, on a fuel injected engine. On a carbureted engine, that's your last chance inside the back of the carburetor is a little bitty screen as well. And this is what they found. It's a screen, literally. You look at the size of the fingers here, and the screen is that big. So, if you find rubber or trash, investigate it. When the mechanic when the FAA came to the mechanic and asked, "Hey, did you inspect the FCU screen?" The comment, the legal comment comment was, we've never done that in our shop. And it ended 3 people's lives. And that was just a couple years ago, okay? Midway over Lake Michigan, they realized that it was cutting out. And even with the boost pump, it could not force enough fuel into the engine. And so they ended up taking a dive 10 miles off the coast. Okay, so these little bitty screens, they matter, okay? So FCU, fuel control unit, has a little screen. This is the one on the FCU. That's all it is. On a carburetor, it's a little screen on the inlet side. I want you all to be able to take one off, inspect it, and then put it back in. Before you do that, make sure the fuel selector is in the off position, okay? All right? And make it a regular practice. 50 hour, I'm going to pull that screen and I'm going to look at it. Yep.
Well, in that situation, do you just clean all the screens and send it back out? But like, where would that kind of crap come from?
So they found rubber, which was a bladder tank breaking down on 206.
Okay.
What was the first thing to find it at? Sun. Then it shows up in the gas later. If I have it around the gas later, guess where? There's a high probability that it's going to get to the last chance screen. And that one, it will not go through. There is a screen inside the fuel injectors. Okay? And we'll get to that. I think Case is now taking that class over from us. But when you get there, you actually are supposed to soak fuel injectors for 20 minutes in a sonic cleaner. And they have these tiny, cute baby screens in them. Okay? And they get clogged sometimes. All right? Any questions? Yes, Parker?
What is all that?
That is a bladder tank breaking down.
That's all rubber? All
Yep,
rubber.
mostly rubber, yep, and then it's just picked up trash in the fuel lines, and as it goes through fuel selector, you know, anything in the lines. But the reason why it's so compact is because they had the boost pump on, pushing as much pressure. Boost pump was pushing 30, 40 PSI, which is more than enough needed, but it wouldn't go through the screen to get the engine to keep running. Yep.
Do you think that was, overtime, it wasn't being checked enough, or is it breaking down that fast that it clogged that fast?
I think this is probably overtime.
Just do it neglected?
And that's what I was telling you is, you're really, we call you mechanics, but you're really detectives, because you have very little information ever. Unless a pilot really knows their airplane, you get very little information, and you've got to go sometimes on your hunches. Man, I pulled that gascolator and there was stuff on the gascolator. I'm going to go to the next thing and I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to make sure it's clean, because something's breaking down. Did they get bad fuel? No, they're at the same airport. I don't have any other reports of bad fuel. What do I point back to? Something on that aircraft is breaking down. Make sense? Okay,
Sure, that should be checked at inspections, right?
50 hours.
So that
100 hour
check-
minimum.
The response, obviously that shop was very negligible in that.
Yeah, and you're gonna find, I mean, I had a student last year that just took a job in Kentucky. Got there and he said, the newest manual they had was 1982. He said, so I showed him what the FAR says, that every inspection we have to have current data. And the boss accepted that, very humbly, and said, okay. And they spent about $7 or $8 grand on new data. They called up here, we gave them some websites to get the information downloaded. So, not a joke. No.
That looks like a lot of very small particulars. How much actually do you have in that popcorn?
Oh, that won't make it through fuel injectors.
I mean, if that screen wasn't there.
And then the screen wasn't inside the fuel injectors.
Yeah.
Sure, it would probably, yeah. It would probably go into the combustion chamber and probably, burn up.
Anything that small.
Yeah. But our job is to clean it, right? The point is today, they didn't do their job. Okay? All right, take a why don't you guys take about a 10-minute break? Why don't you come back at 5 till? 5 till. David, you take a nap till 5 till, okay?
That's what I'm gonna do.
I'll leave the lights off for you. You want a blanket too?
I would love, no, just sleep in.
Hey, Elijah, a little review here. Let's hit our little review. Okay? So fuel leaks are usually classified as a stain, a seep, a heavy seep, or running leaks. As a general rule, what? This is where it gets a little tricky. No.
They're not. Remember, I said that every once in a while you can go flying with those. Well, then you let it go to water.
Yeah, that's right. What is the most is best answer? C. Stained seeps and heavy seeps, in addition to running leaks, are considered flight hazards when located in unvented areas of the aircraft. In the cockpit, okay? It's a little tricky. I know. Sorry. Parker. Fuel stains around a turbocharged or non-turbocharged fuel injection nozzle would indicate what? Told you there's something inside fuel injector nozzle. What did I tell you was inside fuel injector nozzle? A screen. So, A is correct. If it's showing stains around the top of it, then it's a clogged nozzle. Okay, pressure's building right there. Okay. What did I do with my fuel injector? FCU. Fuel? That's not it.
I see, yeah, A makes sense, but could also C be true as well? Yeah.
Wouldn't a clog make too much fuel pressure?
So what?
Wouldn't a clog make too much fuel pressure?
Good. It would, a clog is going to increase your fuel pressure on your manifold, not necessarily flow. Yeah, at your manifold. It would increase it. Right. But if I set my pump at 30 instead of 25, it's just going to, more fuel is going to return back to the fuel pump. The system's working right. Before fueling an aircraft by using the pressure fueling method, what important precautions should be observed? Sydney. What's the simplest answer here?
Sorry, it takes me, I got like reread the question 5 times.
You're totally fine. C is a good answer. All right. What flight safety related advantage does a pressure fueling system provide, Mr. Wilson? What flight safety related advantage does a pressure fueling system provide? Trying to get the logic here, so. There's only one that kind of makes sense. A. A. Most sense, I guess. John. Which procedure must be followed when defueling aircraft with swept back wings? on the table in front of, like the restrooms right there, so FCU stuff like this.
What's B in that answer?
Sir?
You said, was Charlie, not?
Oh, I'm sorry, B, drain off static charges. What did I say? Prevent stray currents. Drain static charges, my bad. My bad. Thank you.
Yep.
All right, appreciate it. So this is FCU, okay, which stands for Fuel Control Unit. Okay, this would be on a fuel-injected Continental, okay? So one side controls, is mixture control, which is, mixture is the gateway for fuel. Okay? Fuel's on, fuel's off. Fuel's on, fuel's off. Doesn't say fuel's going to the engine yet. That's what the throttle says, how much fuel goes to the engine. This is just fuel's on and off for the engine. Okay? Now, so then fuel comes in here from your fuel pump. Okay? These are typically located at the most difficult place for a mechanic ever to reach. Please, 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 if it's a turbocharged engine, don't go inspect the screen until hours after operation. Turbochargers run at 1500 degrees. 1500 degrees and fuel leaking out, not a good scenario. That's all you got. So that's what was clogged. Okay? Fuel comes in right into that stream. They're extremely difficult to get to. Unless it's 210. 210's right on the back of the engine like that. Reach in, cut the safety wire. It's actually harder to safety wire than it is to get in there and inspect it. Pop it off. There it is. Make sure it's clean. Put it back in. Alright, I'll pass it around. Just a word of warning, safety wire is still there, sharp, don't cut yourself out. Okay, on the carburetor, this is be a larger 6-cylinder carburetor, a Marvel Chevrolet. It's from North Carolina, so yes, for Marvel Chevrolet. Okay, so fuel comes in here. Oftentimes, most of the time, majority of the time, it's going to be on the inlet side. But for some unknown reason to me, they put it on the opposite side of this one. There it is, as beautiful as ever. Okay, that one probably is time to change. Okay, a little sketchy. And so fuel comes in right here, goes through an inlet, a little inlet hole, and drops right down into the fuel bowl. Yeah? So, pull it out, make sure it's clean. That way we make sure that clean fuel. Now, let's ask Corbin a problem here. Corbin, would rubber pieces be a problem in a carbureted system? So, how's a carburetor work? You've got a Venturi effect. The bottom is bigger than the top because it makes a shallow throat through it. So air is actually speeding up, increasing velocity, does what to the pressure? Decreases pressure. So we get condensation as it speeds up through here. So in here, so if in the event that you had dirt, contaminants get past the screen, they're going to clog those holes. And as it goes through, you have what we call impact. Make a big impact. Impact pressure, which then causes fuel to get sucked up into the airstream. And dirt in that system would prevent that. And then the fuel couldn't actually get into, get atomized with the air. Okay? I'm going to hop through this lecture pretty quick if you guys are good with that. Everybody good with that? Take my timer, we'll go a little quick, okay? So, types of filter systems. We have screens, we have gaskelators, mesh screens, okay? very routine. Today is very routine. We're gonna look for leaks. We're gonna look for make sure our system's clean. Okay? So, right here, the first picture is the top of a needle. The top of a needle. Okay? So a fuel strainer has coarse wire mesh. It traps large pieces of debris. It does not inhibit the flow of water. So water could still get through it. But look at this 1 micron dust particle. And so when we're talking about a micron filter, it's supposed to stop anything that small. Fuel filters, fine mesh strainer filters are often used interchangeably. Micron filter commonly used in turbine aircraft, captures extremely fine particles. Okay, this is what type of screen is this here in the picture? Finger screen, good. Often found where? In the fuel tank. Okay, the outlet of the fuel tank. All aircraft fuel systems that have filters and screens to ensure fuel is delivered to the engine is mostly or all completely free of contamination. Sump's the lowest part. If I haven't said that once, I've said it a few times. Screen and fuel pickup locations are just above the sump. All right, intake boost pump, intake in-tank boost pumps. So sometimes that you'll have a boost pump located in the tank, like we did our King Air out there. Strainers located at the inlet to the boost pump, and then regular inspections and cleaning is required. Main strainer. Anthony, does this bring back wonderful memories? What is this one off of? C85. So old school ones would be glass. Super cool. You walk up, you say, yep, look good to me. You know, you could tell whether there was water in it or fuel. It was nice and blue. Problem with that is Michigan always wins. So when water would sit in the bottom of a glass bowl, what would happen? Ka-ching! So we have several out there, body parts that we pulled off of our birds that have set off and endured the wretched winters. I love snow, if you don't know that already. Anyway, it's pretty common that they will get cracked. What do you also notice about this one, Mr. Parker Miller? What is it missing? It's an obvious thing, so don't overthink it. What's it missing? Yes, I know fuel lines, but what else is it missing? Two things I'm looking for. Safety wire and a drain. You guys see a drain on it? There's no drain. And there's no safety wire. So, what they have gone to now is a McFarlane aftermarket. A couple $100, you slap it on there. Looks just like the other ones. Yep.
So, back home on our tractors, we had sediment holes that were almost exactly like that. And occasionally, you know, my brother and I would get a little beefed up with it, and we'd reef it on there and crack them with that bottom screw nut. Is that a problem with those as well?
Sure. But it's not a tractor, it shouldn't be tightened that tight. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cessna gasolator or strainer. Review Cessna maintenance manual. Remove cowl, collect tools, spill pans and buckets. Turn off the fuel selector. Turn off the fuel selector. And once again, turn off the fuel selector. Remember, safety first. Safety glasses and fire extinguisher. What type of fire extinguisher, Lee? CO2 would be a good one, yep. All right. And then always refer to the manual for torquing of the bowl. Okay? You guys have probably been my best class thus far as far as removing of the gasolators. In the past, they've gotten excited and they've removed the whole system. Getting inside the cockpit, removing the bolts and pulling it off the firewall and saying, here it is. That's not inspection. That's destruction. Okay? So, just pull the one that usually means that that's the part that's removed. Okay? So you would remove this, you would remove, what's this called? Standpipe, nailed it. And the filter screen, good. And you would inspect those, make sure they're clean, put it back on and torque it, okay? Everybody good there? Use a 1969 or later single-engine Cessna service manual to find the torque. Okay. We jump a couple pages here. You guys tell me what's wrong with this picture. All right, hold on. Come on, you want to answer all the questions, I know. Charlie, tell me what's wrong with it, man. What do you see? What do you see that I see?
Safety wire pulling that loose.
Yes. What in the world? What else did we see with the safety wire? Somebody else?
On a 45.
Not at a 45. Not in a split. I didn't see that. Thank you. And not at a 45. What does that mean? Didn't read the manual. All right, that bad boy should come down like this and go all the way around to the other side. Boom. Not down, straight down, because it's super convenient to go straight down. That's not right. Bring it down and around the bowl and put it to the other side. Okay? Because the manual says so. No, not torque wrench. Okay? But that's all they tell you. Assemble in reverse order. All right. So when you hook up, this is where your maintenance understanding has to come into play. From the gasculator goes to the carburetor. Okay, here's our carburetor. So gasculator is going to be back here, and this is your main fuel inlet from the gasculator. So that's going to be where the screen is at. Okay. You'll need to pull it. Booyah, there it is. Okay? Pull off the head. Once again, if I didn't say it already, make sure the fuel is where? Off. Thank you. Then turn it off. There is the screen. There's the screen. Now you can remove the inlet screen, and the screen and elbow are removed as one unit. No need to separate the two. Okay? So inspect it carefully, looking for problems. Putting it back in, there it goes, right there at the back of the carburetor. All right, couple types. So this is one you've already seen here. You'll have multiple pieces on the older ones, like what you were talking about with the tractors, where you'll have a sump here with a bottom. You'll have a glass bowl, then you have another screen, and you have 3 gaskets. A little annoying, but you need to make sure, if you see one of these, that you get a table, a couple rags laid out, and then you pull it off in reverse order, or in the order, that way you can put it back on in reverse order, okay? So, righty. Fuel filters, larger ones, have double fuel screen construction, cone shapes, and remove particles and water contaminants. Turbine fuel control units, tight tolerance. The goal is to deliver clean, contamination-free fuel. Located between the tank and the fuel control unit. And the big difference is they have absorbed water if present, but it also incorporates a bypass valve in the event that it did clog. The engine would be able to keep running even though it would take in particles. Okay, additional filter located downstream of engine drain pump. All right, any questions? I talked about fuel heaters yesterday. I'm talking about it real quick here. Any questions about fuel filters, screens? Okay, operation at higher altitudes and colder temps increases the risk of ice formation. So fuel heaters are used to warm the fuel so ice does not form. Often operate intermittently as needed. Or sometimes they're connected to the oil system. Why is that? So they'll cool the oil. Oh, I have to slow down a little bit. Cool the oil, and also heat the fuel up. Okay. So sometimes they're made in the same system. Okay. I think jars will bring a oil cooler fuel heater when they come. Anti-icing fuel additives may be used to reduce the risk of ice forming in the fuel. Okay. Everybody good? All right, I am done. You guys head out to the lab. I opened another lab. I'm going to open one right now for you. If you don't get this one done today, it's fine. Let me go over it real quick in just a moment. Numero 6.2 says that you need to inspect a quantity indicator. How do you do that? Well, you hook your ohm meter right here, and then based on what type it is, it will read resistance from one end, either all the way empty or all the way full, and then you should see a steady change in resistance as you lift it or reduce it. Okay? So, it says, on an assigned aircraft, remove the fuel quantity transmitter. If your aircraft didn't have one, I have several, or you could remove them from the Apache as well. Then measure the resistance, and then write that down. Okay? All right? If the manual doesn't list it, oftentimes it won't. Then just let me know and kind of give you a reference point. All right? If you've already done it, then just put in the details here. All right, you guys. Thank you for listening to this.